In the spotlight, we're taught to believe that life at the top of fame is flawless, perfectly styled, carefully curated, and endlessly glamorous. But behind the bright lights and red carpets, fame doesn't always mean a clean or polished life. And sometimes, extraordinary talent comes with habits that are downright uncomfortable. The stories you're about to hear aren't about hit songs or blockbuster movies. They're about the quiet, unsettling details that linger in the shadows of celebrity lives: sweat, body odor, grimy fingernails, sour socks, stained towels. For decades, these imperfections clung to the lives of 17 black legends, secrets few ever dared to whisper. Now, we're opening the door to a hidden world most fans never see, where some stars believed that neglecting personal hygiene fueled their creative fire, and where body odor wasn't a flaw, but part of who they were. Ruby Dee. Ruby Dee, the queen of Broadway, yet a sour, rotting sock stench that lingered backstage for days became part of her legend. Ruby Dee stood as a towering figure of American stage and film, bound to Broadway's heaviest roles and a lifelong fight for equality. She was revered by her peers for total immersion, raw emotional depth, and a relentless, almost sacred work ethic that stretched across decades. But behind the glowing footlights of the 1950s and 1960s, Ruby Dee carried a habit that quietly shocked entire theater crews. Caught between endless rehearsals, late-night performances, and non-stop civil rights meetings, she practically lived inside New York's sweltering theaters. In that grind, Ruby Dee would peel off sweat-soaked socks, seal them in a bag, leave them untouched for 4 or 5 days, then pull them back on for the next rehearsal, unwashed. The odor grew stronger by the day, clinging to her feet, creeping across the floor, and invading every backstage corner like a fog you couldn't escape. It wasn't just neglect. Ruby Dee believed the mix of stage sweat, gritty city dust, and cigarette smoke from tense meetings preserved what she called character, a raw emotional charge. To her, washing too clean meant stripping away the poverty, struggle, and harsh reality her roles demanded. That sour sock rot wasn't sloppiness in her mind, it was commitment. Backstage, breathing could become a challenge. Coworkers rehearsed while subtly fanning the air, trying to push back the thick stench hanging around them. After long hours, the smell seemed to soak into curtains, wooden chairs, even drifting toward the audience in intimate theaters. But to Ruby Dee, that discomfort was the cost of truth. She accepted the side glances, the silent suffering, as long as she could step on stage emotionally intact, raw, bruised, and real, just like life beyond the theater doors. Her unsettling hygiene habit revealed an extreme devotion to art. Ruby Dee was willing to sacrifice personal comfort, even the sanity of an entire backstage, to protect what she believed was the soul of her acting, authenticity at any price. Chuck Berry, the founding father of rock and roll and the man infamous for a truly horrifying habit, wearing the same stinking underwear through week-long tours. Berry wasn't just another performer, he laid the very foundation of rock and roll, a name forever tied to songs that reshaped pop music history. With explosive stage energy, razor-sharp guitar riffs, and an influence that echoed across generations, he stood apart from everyone who followed. Back in the 1950s, when the first rock and roll tours rolled through the American South, Chuck Berry's life was glued to rickety trucks and relentless, dust-choked schedules. Night after night, town after town, those early tours were brutal, and somewhere along the way, a bizarre hygiene habit took hold. Berry would wear the same pair of underwear for 7 to 10 days straight. No washing. No changing. Not even after sweat-soaked, all-out performances. Southern roads kicked up red dirt. The trucks rattled endlessly. Sweat mixed with grime, clinging to bodies like a second skin. Day by day, the odor of old underwear seeped into his ripped jeans, and with every movement, the stench wafted through the tight truck cabs. During brief stops, Berry didn't search for showers or clean clothes. Instead, he ducked into local stores, bought cheap talc powder, and sprinkled it on as a quick mask before hitting the road again. Behind it all was superstition, rooted in his poor St. Louis childhood. Chuck Berry believed that changing habits, even small ones, could disrupt his natural rock and roll rhythm. To him, the stink, the sweat, and the grime of touring were part of the performance. a ritual that kept his groove intact. Financial pressure only tightened that belief. Every show felt like life or death, every tiny mistake a threat to his livelihood. So as the smell grew worse, Barry endured it, convinced it was the price of staying sharp. Those forced to ride with him often rolled down every window, even at highway speeds, silently suffering through the funk. Things finally changed when a roadside motel flat out refused him a room. After just minutes at the front desk, the overpowering odor made staff and guests visibly uncomfortable, and Barry was asked to leave. It was a humiliating moment, and the mark that his strange hygiene habit had crossed everyone else's limit. That night, Chuck Berry finally decided to change, cutting his marathon underwear runs down to just 2 or 3 days. Still, he never truly regretted the years before. In his mind, that stink, that sweat, and that stubborn ritual had kept his rock and roll spirit unbroken. Diana Ross. Diana Ross, the undisputed queen of pop, and a strange, little-known secret, using old newspapers instead of toilet paper. One of the most towering icons in music history, Ross rose to fame with the Supremes during the soul pop explosion, then shattered expectations by conquering the world as a solo star. By the 1970s, as the group dissolved and solo careers accelerated, she was everywhere, striding across global stages with glamour, magnetism, and an irresistible aura. Behind the spotlight, however, her life was a blur of non-stop flights, US to Europe, then back again, crammed schedules turning daily routines into improvised survival. Somewhere in that chaos, an unusual hygiene habit quietly took hold beneath the polished exterior. On long commercial flights or in modest European hotels, Diana Ross often used old newspapers instead of toilet paper. It began as a matter of convenience. On planes, supplies sometimes ran out after hours in the air. In makeshift stays, proper hygiene wasn't always guaranteed. She would tear pages from papers she carried, convinced they were softer than roadside leaves and practical for a constantly moving crew. The reality, though, was far less pleasant. When wet, the black ink bled and smeared, soaking through with a damp paper stench mixed with sharp ammonia. Ink clung stubbornly to skin, leaving dark streaks that were difficult to wash away, sometimes causing a light sting. The lingering odor could cling to clothes and seep into thin performance fabrics, giving dressing rooms an uneasy, off smell. Still, she never fully abandoned the habit. The reason ran deep. It traced back to a frugal mindset forged in her childhood in Detroit's housing projects. Even as superstardom wrapped her in couture and flawless makeup, that thrift never disappeared. It was simply hidden beneath luxury. Add the crushing pressure of maintaining a perfect public image, and personal comfort behind the scenes often took a back seat to looking immaculate on stage. Her assistants knew. They didn't complain. They adapted. On tour, they quietly stocked wet wipes and cleaning supplies. When Ross resisted unfamiliar alternatives, they discreetly removed ink stains and neutralized lingering odors from her costumes before showtime. Thanks to their silent work, Diana Ross always stepped into the spotlight pristine and radiant, while the secret remained tucked away behind the curtain. B.B. King. B.B. King, the undisputed king of the blues, riding through America's back roads with a guitar, a soul full of sorrow, and a body left unwashed for weeks inside suffocating tour buses. B.B. King was a living monument of the blues, carrying the raw sound and aching emotions of the southern United States to audiences around the world. With his unmistakable style, relentless schedule of hundreds of shows a year, and near superhuman stamina, he dominated stages for decades. During the 1960s and 1970s, his life became inseparable from endless month-long tours across the South and Midwest. Day after day, night after night, he lived inside rattling, cramped buses with no comfort and no real relief. After smoky barroom shows ended near dawn, when the stage lights finally went dark, B.B. King climbed back into overheated bus cabins that felt more like ovens than shelter. On the road, he often chose not to shower for 2 or even 3 weeks at a time. No running water, only the stench of old vinyl seats, cheap cigarette smoke, and bourbon fumes seeping from rolling glass bottles on the floor. As the days passed, layers of dried sweat and grime clung to his neck, underarms, and back, forming a gray film that never quite faded. The smell grew heavier, blending sweat, smoke, and alcohol into thick, stagnant air that made breathing feel like work. This habit traced back to his childhood in Mississippi, where long days picking cotton under a brutal sun made sweat a constant companion. To B.B. King, sweat wasn't dirt, it was life. In his mind, water didn't just clean the body, it risked washing away the blues flowing through him. He believed showering too often could dull his emotions, soften his music, strip his guitar Lucille of its necessary roughness. What began as belief slowly hardened into superstition. With a crushing schedule of up to 300 performances a year and exhaustion sinking deep into his bones, he clung tighter to the habit. The odor followed him everywhere. Into his clothes, his luggage, even his instruments. The band had no choice but to adapt. In winter, they cracked the windows wide, letting icy wind slash through the bus just to make the air breathable. Industrial-strength deodorant sprays were used constantly on seats, curtains, and shared spaces, masking the smell only for moments at a time. B.B. King's hygiene ritual turned every tour into a grueling endurance test, where transcendent music rose night after night, while those around him silently suffered in its shadow. Flavor Flav. A hip-hop icon wrapped in chaos, noise, and a look you could smell before you saw. Flavor Flav was inseparable from Public Enemy, a living symbol of hip-hop's explosive rise, known for his wild energy, unmistakable image, and total unpredictability. Wherever he went, disorder followed. By the late 80s and into the 90s, as Public Enemy hit its peak, Flav's life became a non-stop blur. Recording studios in New York, endless tours, all-night parties, back-to-back appearances, even reality TV shoots, with no pause to breathe. In that constant motion, one strange habit quietly turned into his backstage signature. Flavor Flav would wear the same outfit, hoodie, cargo pants, cap, for days, sometimes weeks. No washing. No changing. Sweat soaked into the fabric, mixing with cigarette smoke, cheap liquor, and the grit of New York streets. Day after day, the stench grew heavier, clinging to his body, trailing him onto stages and into studios, creeping into every room he entered. Drugs only deepened his indifference. Brushing his teeth became an afterthought, pushed aside by highs, long nights, and a life lived in pure chaos. To Flav, those filthy clothes weren't just clothes. They were armor. A shell that kept him rooted in what he believed was the raw heart of hip-hop. That belief came from his rough Long Island upbringing, where grime meant authenticity and polish meant weakness. In his mind, clean clothes dulled his edge, drained the street energy he brought to the mic. The smell, to him, wasn't a problem, it was proof. But the consequences were impossible to ignore. Backstage air turned thick and sour. Bandmates were known to spray deodorant directly on Flavor Flav mid-show just to survive the set. Still, none of it mattered to him. The discomfort, the stench, the complaints, all of it only reinforced his belief that real hip-hop demanded sacrifice, no matter how foul the cost. Tracy Chapman. A protest music genius, born of the late 1980s wave of socially reflective artists, armed with a deep, unshakable voice and brutally honest lyrics. Her self-titled debut album hit like a quiet explosion, powerful, stripped down, and emotionally raw. Chapman built her career on minimalism and rare emotional depth, and that same obsession followed her into the studio. In 1988, while recording her debut, she almost completely shut herself off from the outside world. Her life collapsed into a small, damp Cleveland recording room, dimly lit, poorly ventilated, and stripped of comfort. Day after day, she wore the same faded jeans and worn sweater, unchanged. No deodorant. No perfume. Often she ate, slept, and lived right there in the studio. Grease stains and soda spills soaked into her clothes, but she didn't care. Absolute focus ruled everything. Even brushing her teeth felt like an interruption that might snap the fragile thread of inspiration. In the sealed room, humidity clung to her skin as sweat mixed with old fabric, creating a sour, moldy odor that slowly filled the space. The smell crept into the walls, the carpet, the recording equipment. The air grew heavy, thick with moisture and sweat, making the studio feel abandoned for days at a time. To keep sessions going, sound engineers ran air purifiers non-stop, the steady mechanical hum becoming an eerie backdrop to her guitar and vocals. It was an uncomfortable reminder of the darker side of genius, where creation comes first, and even basic human comforts are sacrificed without hesitation. Otis Redding. Otis Redding, the legendary soul voice forged in heat, sweat, and relentless stage fire. One of the most influential soul singers of the 20th century, Redding didn't just sing emotion, he detonated it. His hoarse, unmistakable voice and all-out performance style left nothing held back. With non-stop recording sessions and endless tours, his name spread fast, cementing him as a Southern soul icon revered by both fans and fellow musicians. By the mid-1960s, as grueling soul tours crisscrossed the American South, a strange habit quietly took hold. The schedule was brutal, hundreds of shows a year, rattling buses, sleepless nights, and almost no real rest. In that chaos, Otis began wearing the same stage clothes night after night, still soaked with sweat from the previous performance. Laundry became an afterthought, especially after sweltering, smoke-filled bar shows. At first, the outfits were washed every few days, but over time the gaps stretched into weeks, sometimes even a month. Old sweat clung to the cotton, embedded deep in every fiber. The sour odor never fully faded, mixing with thick cigarette smoke and the bite of bourbon breath to create a heavy cloud over the stage. When the lights came up and the band kicked in, the smell arrived too, almost like part of the show itself. Bandmates would sometimes grab cheap room spray and give a quick spritz before the curtain rose, hoping to mask the lingering stench. Oddly enough, his everyday clothes were washed normally, only the performance outfits were left untouched. Otis believed that the sweat from past shows carried raw soul power. To him, washing those clothes clean meant washing the emotion away. He feared that too much cleanliness would strip his voice of its grit, that the pain, strain, and energy that fueled his singing would disappear. That superstition stayed with him as the tours grew longer and the exhaustion deeper. One scorching summer night, in a venue with barely any ventilation, the smell became overwhelming. Fans pressed against the stage were first mesmerized, then slowly backed away, not because the music lost its grip, but because the stench hit too hard. Still, Otis sang on, pouring fresh sweat over old, layering it all into a suffocating cycle. His belief kept his emotions razor-sharp, even as his body paid the price. That strange hygiene ritual wasn't just an odd quirk. It reflected the brutal life of a touring soul artist and revealed the thin line between passion, superstition, and slow, irreversible depletion. Nina Simone. Nina Simone, the civil rights piano queen, created amid chaos, intensity, and an almost feral devotion to her art. A rare musical force, she was a classically trained pianist whose unmistakable voice became inseparable from the civil rights movement itself. Her music carried heavy politics, fierce emotion, and a moral weight that pushed her far beyond entertainment, turning her into the voice of a turbulent era. During the 1960s and 1970s, as protest songs were born in the thickest air of social tension, Simone developed unusual hygiene habits, sometimes going days without showering while locked away in studios or hotel rooms. She would barely rinse herself, relying on quick wipes just to ease the itch, then rush back to the piano, believing that stopping to bathe might break the emotional current racing through her mind. In damp New York rooms or sealed European studios, cigarette smoke hung endlessly, mixing with the weight of unwashed days until the air grew dense and clung to the walls, the keys, every breath. During winter sessions, sound engineers cracked windows open, letting icy wind cut through the room to thin the lingering smell. Political pressures surrounded her constantly. These songs weren't meant merely to be heard, but to confront, to resist. At the same time, her mental health struggles pushed her further inward. She isolated herself with the piano, spoke little, cared little for ordinary routines. Grueling schedules, studio to stage, hotel to hotel, forced every ounce of energy into creation alone. Her belief that showering would cool her emotions wasn't random. It traced back to a harsh North Carolina childhood where endurance and feeling were tightly bound. Over time, smoke, body heat, and damp rooms became part of her creative world, conditions she believed kept her emotions raw and unfiltered. That strange ritual quietly followed her through many albums, where naked feeling and brutal honesty became the foundation of Nina Simone's enduring art. Wesley Snipes. A Hollywood action warrior, his presence on set was as intense as the films he headlined, and so was the heavy scent of sweat that seemed to follow him everywhere. For years, Snipes embodied the classic action movie face: a chiseled body, a hardened stare, and a relentless physicality built for roles that demanded non-stop movement. From the 1990s into the early 2000s, blockbusters like Blade and Passenger 57 cemented his image as cold, powerful, and unbreakable. But behind the scenes, during those punishing shoots, a strange habit became whispered about lore among cast and crew. Filming often stretched from dawn until deep into the night, with Snipes constantly in motion, jumping between scorching deserts and humid jungles. In that chaos, showering slipped far down his list of priorities. Instead, he relied on old, reused wet towels, wiping himself down with water that had been soaking for days. Only when the towels turned dark and filthy would he replace them. With his intense training and non-stop action scenes, sweat poured endlessly. Old sweat never fully dried before new layers formed, mixing with body oil and grime until it clung thickly to his skin. The smell didn't disappear when cameras stopped rolling. It lingered on set, hanging in the air. Some co-stars reportedly covered their faces during close scenes. Others kept their distance just to endure the workday. Snipes, however, saw nothing wrong with it. To him, this was discipline. He believed frequent showers weakened a warrior's energy, a mindset shaped by his Florida upbringing and years of martial arts training. Staying gritty, maintaining that raw, unpolished edge, was part of how he stayed locked into character and kept his physique battle-ready. The downside was unavoidable. Sweat sank deep into costumes, becoming nearly impossible to remove. Shoots were sometimes paused for fresh wardrobe changes or emergency sprays, slowing production. What seemed like a bizarre hygiene choice was actually a reflection of the extreme pressure behind those iconic action roles. Beneath the slick, thrilling footage was an unspoken trade-off, where muscle, belief, and sheer physical endurance collided daily, testing not just limits of the body, but of everyone working nearby. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge, the silver screen goddess with flawless smiles hiding an unglamorous secret. A true Hollywood pioneer, she shattered barriers for Black actors, captivating audiences with her sensual presence, magnetic stage energy, and breakout roles that forced the entire industry to pay attention. By the 1950s, her career was relentless. From Carmen Jones to back-to-back studio projects, grueling schedules swallowed her days and nights, keeping her locked on crowded sets with no time to breathe. Slowly, self-care slipped. Toothbrushing became irregular, replaced by quick mouth rinses, endless gum, and cigarettes meant to mask a sour, sometimes fishy breath lingering beneath the smoke. In wide shots, everything played fine. But during close-ups, the odor occasionally betrayed her. Some co-stars quietly learned to breathe through their noses just to get through a scene. Crushed by the pressure of being Hollywood's first Black female star, Dorothy guarded her image obsessively, makeup flawless, gowns perfect, lighting precise. While oral care became secondary, handled only when absolutely necessary. Harsh early dental tools damaged her enamel, reinforcing the cycle, while constant stress and the weight of racism in the industry made neglect feel normal. Behind the glamour, exhaustion ruled, and the habit followed her. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye, the soul legend whose voice changed music forever, yet whose personal habits quietly unsettled those around him. One of the most influential voices in soul history, his music carved deep grooves into modern sound, blending artistry with raw, exposed emotion. During the 1970s, while crafting landmark albums like What's Going On and Let's Get It On in a private Los Angeles studio, Marvin slipped into an unusual and unsettling hygiene routine. He worked through the night, often grieving, locking himself inside the studio with no interruptions allowed, believing isolation fueled inspiration. Brushing his teeth felt unnecessary to him, almost intrusive. Instead, he'd occasionally rinse his mouth and chew fresh mint leaves, just enough to make his breath tolerable. Even that was often skipped until his tongue felt sticky. The mint offered only a temporary disguise, barely masking the sour mix of alcohol and fast food that lingered underneath. In band meetings, the odor was impossible to ignore. People instinctively kept their distance, shifting carefully in closed rooms to avoid the discomfort no one dared mention. Marvin never saw it as a problem. To him, a toothbrush disrupted emotional flow, an interruption to creativity. That belief mirrored his chaotic lifestyle and deepening addictions. In many ways, this small but extreme habit reflected a period when emotional intensity and artistic obsession mattered more to him than even the most basic needs. Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin, the undisputed queen of soul, her throne built on a voice that shook churches, studios, and stadiums alike. An immortal icon whose power set the gold standard for generations of artists who followed. Through the 1970s and 1980s, as Aretha dominated charts with one soul classic after another, a strange and rarely spoken habit quietly traveled with her on the road. Night, after electrifying performances, foot washing was often skipped. Instead, she would give her feet a quick wipe and heavily coat them in layers of talc powder, believing it preserved the grounding she needed to command the stage. Her touring schedule was relentless, planes, buses, and dressing rooms blurred together. Hours spent in tight high heels put enormous strain on her feet, yet she avoided soaking them, convinced it dulled her connection to the floor beneath her. Over time, sweat, heat, and powder fused inside worn cotton socks, creating a sharp, sour odor that lingered when shoes came off backstage. Assistants learned to keep deodorizing sprays ready, stepping in before dressing rooms became unbearable. The habit traced back to her gospel roots, where standing firm on the church floor was believed to channel vocal power. Under non-stop pressure and superstition forged in faith, Aretha clung to that ritual through countless tours, a hidden, unglamorous secret behind the glow of a living legend. Sidney Poitier, a towering monument of American cinema, a man who opened locked doors for black actors with dignity, gravity, and unforgettable performances. In the 1950s and 1960s, Poitier reshaped Hollywood with serious, commanding roles in classics like In the Heat of the Night and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Yet behind the polished screen presence, a curious on-set habit quietly followed him through long shooting days. Grueling hours left little time for comfort. Between takes and costume changes, Poitier would grab quick bites, often greasy or spicy food, eating fast, wiping his hands briefly with a napkin, then pulling his wardrobe right back on. Fried oil, chili sauce, stubborn crumbs clung to his skin. The smell didn't fade, it lingered, trailing him from scene to scene. When those hands brushed jackets or trousers, the scent spread, settling into the fabric. During handshakes with co-stars or directors, a faint but unmistakable odor sometimes surfaced, prompting others to keep a polite distance without a word. Poitier himself believed his hands needed to retain their natural oils to channel raw, honest emotion on screen. That belief was rooted in a hard childhood in the Bahamas, where endurance and survival shaped daily life. Combined with the crushing weight of racism in Hollywood, he poured every ounce of himself into his work, pushing personal comfort, and even hygiene, far down the list. That small, human habit became a quiet symbol of the unseen cost of total immersion, a silent price paid by a man carrying the burden of excellence in cinema's harshest era. Harry Belafonte, a towering civil rights icon, yet burdened by a disturbing stress habit hidden behind the spotlight. Belafonte was not only the king of calypso but also a fearless activist whose music and voice helped shape American culture through the 1950s and 1960s. As he balanced chart-topping performances with dangerous civil rights battles, an unsettling ritual followed him everywhere. Under intense pressure, his hands would rise to his mouth without thought. He chewed his nails relentlessly, until they bled, then swallowed the torn, filthy fragments as a twisted form of relief. With a brutal schedule of concerts, meetings, marches, and protests, nail care became non-existent. Dirt from the streets, sweat, bacteria, and food residue collected beneath his nails, and all of it went down with each bite. Germs didn't matter in those moments. The habit was born in his stressful youth, when nail-biting became a coping mechanism, a way to stay steady before hostile crowds and life-or-death situations. Over time, repetition turned it into pure reflex. Before stepping on stage, assistants would quietly remind him to stop, sometimes wiping blood from his fingers once the lights went down. This was the unseen shadow of a legend, an icon constantly bracing himself against the crushing pressures of his era. Stevie Wonder, a musical genius with an unusual, often whispered about habit. Stevie Wonder stands as a towering monument of contemporary music, a multi-talented visionary whose classic run of albums reshaped the sound of entire generations and left deep marks on music history. Beginning in the 1970s, especially during the Songs in the Key of Life era, Stevie disappeared from the outside world. He cut himself off from everyday rhythm and buried himself in recording studios for endless hours, sometimes day and night, lost inside creation. Within that intense creative vortex, a strange personal habit quietly took root. Stevie rarely clipped his fingernails, letting them grow long as he played piano, strummed guitars, and explored every key with raw passion and unstoppable energy. Over time, grime collected beneath them, dead skin, sweat, even crumbs from hurried studio meals. Engineers were constantly wiping down keyboards to keep grease and food smells from lingering in the room. Yet Stevie was unmoved. He believed his long nails enhanced his sense of rhythm, acting as an extension of the music itself. That belief, born from a life sealed inside studios, followed him across album after album, silently existing alongside melodies that would go on to shake the entire world. Ray Charles, the towering music legend whose genius reshaped American sound, yet who carried with him a strange and unsettling ritual. An architect of soul, jazz, rhythm, and blues, Ray Charles bent genres together and rewrote pop history from the 1950s through the 1960s and 1970s, living on the road with no finish line in sight. Endless tours, rattling buses, cities blurring into one another, there were no real baths, no proper laundry stops. And through it all, one battered face towel never left his side. He used it to wipe sweat pouring down after every song, to dry tears that rose mid-performance, to clean his mouth, his skin caked with the dust of the road. The problem was simple and disturbing. Week after week, that towel was never washed. Old sweat fused with sour tears and dry highway grit, the smell sinking deep into every fiber until the cloth grew stiff and heavy, carrying a presence that made bandmates uneasy just standing nearby. Yet to Ray Charles, that towel was sacred. Washing it, he believed, would wash away emotion, erase the soul trapped inside the music. That belief was born in a poor Florida childhood and hardened by a brutal schedule of nearly 300 shows a year. Even when feverish, exhausted, barely holding together, Ray still pressed that ragged towel to his face, his final, faithful companion on stage. Eartha Kitt, the cabaret queen, a wilted wildflower wrapped in sweat and mystery, left a presence that haunted dressing rooms long after the curtain fell. A multi-talented stage icon with global fame, she was celebrated for her sensual voice, bold cabaret flair, and wildcat seduction that ruled entertainment from the 1950s through the 1970s. Constantly moving between European cabaret halls and American stages, Eartha lived on the road. And famously, she almost never used conventional deodorant. Instead, she crushed wildflowers by hand, extracted their essence, and carried the scent with her everywhere, like an inseparable talisman. But packed shows, cramped dressing rooms, and relentless flights caused those flowers to wilt quickly. What began as a fresh, earthy fragrance slowly twisted, blending with scorching stage lights and body sweat, until it became heavy, thick, and impossible to ignore. After long performances, the scent of decaying petals mixed with human breath clung tightly to her skin and costumes, filling sealed rooms entirely. Some new co-workers, unprepared for the intensity, cracked open windows and took quick breaths just to adjust. Eartha noticed their subtle grimaces, yet she never broke the habit, carrying it well into midlife. Perhaps, in her mind, that primal scent preserved her untamed allure, true to the prowling cat image she fiercely embodied. Under the pressure of her carefully crafted persona and a life spent wandering, This ritual followed her through every stage of her career, regardless of the quiet discomfort it stirred around her. You see, behind the stage lights and thunderous applause, stars often carry habits strange enough to shock. If any detail made you pause, drop a comment below, share your thoughts, or tell me which figure haunts you the most. And don't forget to hit subscribe, so you won't miss more gritty backstage stories and hidden corners of celebrity life that few dare to talk about.